Cassandra had always loved her job as an air hostess. The thrill of traveling the world and meeting new people was what had drawn her to the profession. But on one fateful red-eye flight, she encountered a stranger who would send shivers down her spine and change her perspective on the world forever. The flight was en route from New York to London, and Cassandra was part of the crew on this long-haul journey. It was a quiet night on the plane. Most passengers were asleep or engrossed in movies on their individual screens. Cassandra was checking the overhead compartments when she noticed a man sitting alone in the last row of the plane. He was dressed in a rumpled suit with a fedora obscuring most of his face. Cassandra approached the man and politely asked if he needed anything. He slowly raised his head to meet her gaze, revealing piercing blue eyes that seemed to bore into her soul. His voice was low and raspy as he spoke. "I'm fine, thank you. Just taking in the view." Cassandra felt a chill run down her spine, but she dismissed it as her imagination playing tricks on her. She went about her duties, attending to other passengers and trying to shake off the eerie feeling that had settled over her. As the night wore on, Cassandra couldn't help but notice that the man in the last row never seemed to sleep. He just sat there, staring out the window, his gaze fixed on the inky blackness outside. Every time she passed by, he would give her that unsettling, predatory smile, as if he knew a terrible secret. Hours passed, and the plane was soon engulfed in darkness as the cabin lights were dimmed to allow passengers to sleep. Cassandra tried to focus on her tasks and maintain a professional demeanor, but her unease continued to grow. It was as if the stranger's presence was suffocating her, a dark cloud in the confined space of the aircraft. Cassandra finally had a moment to herself in the galley. She was pouring a cup of coffee when she heard a voice behind her. It was the stranger. He had silently appeared by her side, sending her heart racing. "Would you like some coffee?" Cassandra asked, trying to maintain her composure. The stranger declined, but his unnerving grin widened. "I don't need coffee. I have something much stronger to keep me awake." Cassandra couldn't hide her anxiety any longer. She hurriedly returned to the main cabin, desperately seeking her colleagues for support. As she explained her encounter, they too became concerned. One of the senior flight attendants suggested notifying the captain, but Cassandra hesitated, fearing that the situation might escalate. They decided to keep a watchful eye on the stranger and discreetly observe his actions. It was during this surveillance that they noticed something even more unsettling. He seemed to be talking to himself, his lips moving in a silent conversation. At times, he would laugh softly as if sharing an inside joke with an invisible companion. Cassandra's colleagues quietly shared their observations and growing concerns. As the hours passed, the stranger's behavior became increasingly erratic. He would stand up and wander around the cabin, seemingly at random. Passengers in adjacent rows began to notice his strange behavior and alerted the crew. Tensions on the plane grew, and it was clear that the stranger was making everyone uncomfortable. The captain was finally informed, and he decided to have an off-duty air marshal on the flight discreetly observe the situation. The marshal discreetly took a seat nearby, ready to intervene if necessary. As the flight neared its destination, the stranger's actions escalated. He began muttering loudly and making unsettling gestures. Passengers were becoming increasingly frightened, and Cassandra could see the panic in their eyes. She and her colleagues were on edge, ready to act if the situation turned dangerous. Finally, just as the plane was preparing to land at London Heathrow Airport, the stranger abruptly stood up and, with a maniacal laugh, reached into his coat pocket. The air marshal sprang into action, tackling the stranger to the ground and restraining him. As the man was subdued, he kept repeating disturbing phrases and mentioning a name that sent chills down Cassandra's spine. It was the name of a passenger who had disappeared on a similar flight several years ago. The authorities were notified, and the man was taken into custody upon landing. Cassandra and her colleagues felt a mixture of relief and lingering dread as they disembarked at the plane. It was a horror they could never have anticipated, and it shook them to their core. The incident haunted Cassandra for months, making her question the true nature of the world and the strangers we encounter. The experience forever changed her perspective, reminding her that even in the midst of the ordinary, darkness can lurk just beneath the surface.